Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the fourth of 5 conversations with practitioners about the What Works Clearinghouse Practice Guide on designing and delivering career pathways at community colleges. This Practitioner's Perspective video series is designed to bring in practitioners from the field to discuss their on-the-ground experience in implementing the Practice Guide recommendations. My name is Sarah Costello from Abt Associates, and I'm the Project Director of the What Works Clearinghouse Post-Secondary Contract, which is funded by IES. Today, I am pleased to be joined by 4 experts. Deborah Bragg is President of Bragg Associates and Founding Director of Community College Research Initiatives at the University of Washington in Seattle and the Office of Community College Research and Leadership at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She serves as an expert panel member guiding the development of the practice guide and will be moderating a conversation with our 3 guest practitioners. Jennifer Foster is the Deputy Executive Director of the Illinois Community College Board. Mike Potter is the Dean of Instruction at Lake Washington Institute of Technology in Washington State. And Katie Peacock works closely with Mike at Lake Washington Institute of Technology, where she is the Director of Student Development. Welcome, and thank you all for joining me today. Before I turn the time over to our guests, I want to briefly introduce Recommendation 4 and its evidence rating. The 4th recommendation in the practice guide is to provide coordinated, comprehensive student supports to improve credit accumulation and completion of non-degree credentials along career pathways. Students often need to navigate a variety of academic and non-academic challenges that can affect their ability to complete coursework and progress toward earning a credential. These challenges include choosing the right program of study, balancing education with family and work obligations, and covering tuition costs and related educational expenses. Providing comprehensive student supports in a coordinated fashion helps students to be more resilient when facing these challenges. The What Works Clearinghouse staff and expert panel assigned Recommendation 4 a moderate level of evidence, which means that there is some evidence meeting the What Works Clearinghouse standards that the practices improve student outcomes, but there may be ambiguity about whether that improvement is a direct result of the practices, or there might be questions about whether the findings can be replicated with a diverse population of students. This rating was based on 15 studies of interventions that include comprehensive student support. Of them, 12 studies meet What Works Clearinghouse group design standards without reservation, and the other 3 studies meet the standards with reservation. For each recommendation, the practice guide provides details about the recommended practice, including how the panel arrived at the level of evidence rating, guidance about how to carry out the recommendation, potential obstacles and solutions, and tools and resources to support carrying out the recommendation. Today, we will focus on the how-to section of the practice guide. The practice guide offers 5 suggestions for how to carry out Recommendation 4. The first how-to step is to conduct an inventory of available supports and clearly define which college departments are responsible for delivering those specific supports. This can be done through a resource mapping exercise to identify academic supports, non-academic or personal supports, career and employment supports, and lastly, financial supports. Through this exercise, staff can identify gaps in supports and work to engage both internal and external partners to improve the available services for students. The second suggestion from the panel is to assess students' needs and connect one-on-one to provide them with relevant supports from intake to program completion and beyond. Many community colleges have started to embrace the importance of wraparound supports for students. During student recruitment and intake, staff should conduct comprehensive needs assessments with each student. They should also make an effort to help students understand the steps along their chosen career path, as well as the available supports to help them along the way. The third how-to is to integrate available supports into the student experience. This involves higher coordination and flexibility between instructors and support staff. For example, career counselors can occasionally attend classes and introduce job search strategies and resources as part of in-class activities. Making student support staff accessible in the evenings and on weekends is another strategy to enhance accessibility for students balancing work and family obligations. For some student populations, using technology in online formats can increase accessibility and nudge students to make better use of existing student support. Virtual advising technologies can be leveraged to help colleges reduce costs while meeting increased demands for support. The next how-to is to monitor student progress, academic and non-academic needs, and supports access. Staff and faculty can ensure that students are able to progress along pathways by monitoring their progress and identifying barriers that students encounter. This is especially critical at transition points. And finally, colleges could consider hiring sector-specific career navigators. Navigators, advisors, mentors, or coaches can provide students with individual coaching, career planning, and assistance navigating the transition to further education and employment. Navigating can also serve as an important resource in connecting students to necessary services. When implemented well, navigators and career coaches can positively affect a student's retention in a program and completion of a credential. Now that I've provided a quick summary of the 5 steps on how to implement recommendation 4, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Deborah, who will moderate a conversation with our guests about how they have implemented or seen the recommendation in action in their own work.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm so happy to be here today, and I'm so really thrilled to be joined by Jennifer, Mike, and Katie. I just have to add that these folks have been my teacher about career pathways in many very important ways, and I'm excited to start the conversation with Jennifer, who, as she well knows, has been my teacher about career pathways for longer than we want to remember, probably. We go way back. Jennifer, which of the 5 how-to steps stand out as most important in your work with community colleges, with the Illinois Community College Board?
Thank you, Deb, and it's so wonderful to be here with all of you. And Deb, you are my mentor. I will say that a lot, and as we work with this career pathways, I would say number 2, as we look at assessing students and connecting with them one-on-one.
And why does number 2 stand out for you, Jennifer?
Well, I think it stands out because it's so important that a student knows where they are in their educational process. Also, to understand, we need to understand better the barriers that a student may have to overcome, especially early on. I think a lot of our students have lots of barriers, and they don't really understand how to navigate those areas. And so if we start looking at what students' needs are in the beginning and how their needs evolve along their educational process or journey, we can put people in their lives in order to make certain that they know where to go once they experience some sort of educational barrier or life barriers, because we know with our student population, life just happens. And so we want to make certain that we are helping our students to navigate a little bit better.
Yeah. On page 36 of our practice guide, we say community colleges should provide a broad range of academic and non-academic career and financial support services, including proactive academic advising, mentoring, coaching, counseling, career navigation, and financial aid, and referrals to other support services. So that's a lot, but we know it's that combination of comprehensive supports that really does help students. Can you point out maybe one of these support services that you consider most crucial to career pathways?
As we are, as you talked about all of those, they all work together because there is no one size that fits all, and it's kind of hard to narrow them down to just one. You can't have one without the other. It's also going to depend on the student. Because a lot of the services, we can't put everyone into one box and expect them to kind of move in that same direction. So we have to make certain that we are customizing those different supports for each student. Not all students are the same, and we have to recognize that. The Illinois Community College students' average age is 27 years of age. And so their needs are going to differ from someone that is 18 years of age. We sometimes think of community college students as just out of school, they're high school students, but we have to realize that our student populations in community colleges are older. They have more life experiences, they work, they have families. And so we have to treat each student as an individual and recognize that all of their needs are going to be different, and they're going to need different supports in order to be successful. Mm-hmm. So as we talk about our students, we have to give them the tools in which to navigate the academic system. So I would say if I'm looking at one of these, it would be the appropriate academic advising. I think that is so important, because whether you're an 18-year-old and you have parents that are involved in your life, or if you're 27-year-old, you are going to have to make some very important decisions. And so academic advising is so important to make certain that we're meeting the needs of the students and helping them to understand what they need to know, as well as what they will be able to gravitate to as they move along. Understanding that there are certificate programs, especially for our older students. They need to know that they can earn different credentials along the way. So whether it's an industry recognized credential, whether it's a community college basic certificate that they're looking at, that they can see that there is success as they navigate the process. Again, these are working families, and these working families need to really understand and know where they're going to be going in their educational process, and making certain that there are certain payoffs along the career pathway process.
Jennifer, that's such an important point for us to remember. Our students are part of larger families and communities. So when we enroll the student, we are enrolling many more than we may think about. And it's thinking about that we need to do a better job of. Can you give examples of how Illinois community colleges have implemented the navigator position, case management, the kind of work that navigators do? That would be great.
We have lots of adult education programs, and that's what I oversee at the community college system. I oversee everything programmatic. So the academic side, our career technical and education, as well as our adult education programs and student support. So as a part of what we do, navigators are so important. And we learned about navigators through our Accelerating Opportunity initiative. And so those were so successful. And what a navigator does is that they are knowledgeable about a lot of things. A lot of things our counselors are very knowledgeable about, but this takes it a step further. It takes a look at both those internal as well as external supports that can be provided to students in order to make them be successful or help them to be successful. So as we talk about the whole process of navigating, some students need to understand that there are places that they can go. They may not know what those places are. They may be experiencing some sort of burden that is happening within their life. Like I said before, life happens with our students. And so we work very closely to try to make certain that students can make the successful transition between adult basic education into college, but also utilizing those navigators even within the college, because even if you're attending college, you have your high school diploma, life happens. And so we have to make certain that we have what it takes. So pretty much it's so important, as we go back and look at our different steps, is to make certain that we can connect one-on-one and be able to provide that customized support to our students. Sometimes we put a lot of burdens on our teachers, for example, but we need to make certain that there is someone there that is, teachers help in a lot of different ways, and they provide those supports. But we need to have someone, that navigator, that is there to help them to select and be able to move forward in their careers. So we have several examples of our navigators in our community college system. Our Chicago City Colleges has navigators at each one of their institutions in Chicago. We have other entities that are also our community-based organizations that are also navigating and helping to transition students from a community-based organization into a community college. And that can be kind of scary, especially if you're used to living in your neighborhood and you don't want to go outside of that. So having that navigator is so important, important part of the process. So we make certain that those navigators are there, they're knowledgeable. We make sure that they have professional development in order to be able to successfully help the students.
Yeah, that's great. And I think this might be my last question. Based on your experience as a state leader of the Illinois Community College Board, and you have a lot of great experience, Jennifer, what is the most important takeaway that you think someone in your position in state leadership should understand about implementing student supports and supporting career pathways?
I can say that it takes time. But not only it takes time, but for our students whose average age is 27 years of age, time is of the essence. And so with job openings and employers saying that they're not able to fill jobs, we have to make certain that we're taking the time for planning, but we also have to realize that our students need to go to work and our employers need to make certain that they're able to fill the jobs. So we need students to be able to get to work quickly so that our communities are able to fill those jobs of right now as well as the future. We need to take inventory of what is happening within our own institutions and make decisions as to how best to serve our student or our diverse learners. Equity has had a huge amount of attention over this last year and a half. So equity is the way we're looking at things. One size doesn't fit all. So we need to look at our populations and which of our groups are not benefiting from education and could be. So we have to take a look at our programs and how do we enroll diverse groups of students in our different career pathway programs. It's time for us to look at all programs within our colleges and determine what's working within our communities. We have community college within our title, so therefore we're going to look at the needs that happen right there in the community. We need to hear more about what is needed and including what jobs that will lead to a family sustaining wage. And our folks need to know that. Our students need to know that so that they're making great decisions so that when they graduate, they're able to obtain some sort of a family sustaining wage. So taking inventory within our own space to offer the necessary supports or to make any changes that are needed to make certain that we are connecting our students to what is happening within their area. We need to tie the data, look at equity gaps. I think that is so important that we are making certain that all of our students, especially our students of color, our students with disabilities, we need to make certain that they are truly representing the needs within the area and making certain that they have access to those support services. So it's important to make certain we are serving all of our students, from those right out of high school and those that are considered non-traditional and come to the community and want to come to the community college. We need to recognize that those needs are different for all of our students and customize the approaches that we have. So take the time that you need, but also realize that time is of the essence.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. I want to thank you for your leadership in Illinois, and I want to thank you for, really addressing the equity concerns that we have and that we've seen emerge, as you say, especially during this pandemic. You've provided a lot of leadership in Illinois, and we're really proud and happy you've been with us today. I'm also excited to be speaking with colleagues from Washington, where there's also been a great deal of emphasis on equity, and I know that you all will be speaking with equity in mind when you share your thoughts. I'm going to now go to Katie and Mike, and I asked just a few questions. I'm going to start with Katie. Katie, when you think about what your college has done to support the implementation of career pathways, what stands out as most critical to improving student success?
Well, in addition to agreeing with everything that Jennifer just said and the importance of navigators and support along a student's pathway, especially that individualized assistance, I think it's really important that we have really transparent information about the career pathway published on our website and accessible to students, faculty, and advisors. When programs are transparent, there's less ambiguity, and that helps prospective students, advisors, faculty, and then current students with understanding what's required of them along that career pathway, including the sequence of courses, as well as the career opportunities along the pathway if they earn, for example, a certificate or a degree at the end.
And Mike, your thoughts.
For me, it's been lately, we've spent a lot of time clarifying the role that the general education component plays in career pathways and applied associate degrees. So previously, we left a lot of that up to the student to decide what they would take. Sometimes students in applied associate degree would postpone all that to the very end. Sometimes they would exit the college with just their technical training and wouldn't take the gen eds. That seeming lack of caring about the gen ed component filtered over to students and their behavior. We've become a lot more intentional about it now. So now we select from amongst the different categories. We give a recommended gen ed for each of those categories. Sometimes there's even a required one in some programs, and now it's very intentional. And on the instruction side, it's very interesting. We have meetings together now that we've never had before, where department chairs of programs will meet with the department chairs of the gen ed areas, English and math and so forth, and they'll actually plot out that they'll get advice as to what the best recommendation is. They'll coordinate the schedule so the students can actually take that along with their professional technical programs. And it's been very gratifying to me. And I think we've really seen an uptick in our completion numbers when we took the care to think about gen ed thoughtfully.
Yeah, I agree that the clear expectations and understanding of the route from start to finish is really important, and that intentionality from the different departments about which social science class should the student take, which humanities classes should the student take. That's really important, and it's helpful from an advising perspective to help the student understand the connection to the career and how this, for example, public speaking class is going to be the best humanities because it's going to help them in their career opportunities. And so that's been very helpful for students. Instead of just seeing a big list of classes, we actually list out, quarter one, take this, quarter two, take this, quarter three, take this. And the student can see that clear progression and pathway of required or recommended sequence for them to take. And it is flexible in many cases, but at least the student understands how long it's going to take them and what that pathway looks like.
It's been a real difference for faculty as well. Previously, they often would, as soon as a student asked about what math, or I took this math at another college, does it count, and so forth, they would just bump them over to Katie's group and just say, well, go talk to this person, whatever navigator or name they have. They've taken a lot more care now that they've had planning in it and made recommendations. So I see faculty start asking me questions. How can I get better at this? We'll talk to your navigator, right? And start to learn more about these things, talk to the gen ed chair. And so the coordination between the faculty and the navigators in Katie's area has really improved.
I totally agree. And I think, again, being really clear about the requirements and saying take psychology 100 instead of just a social science, that really helps the faculty advisors to feel a lot more confident, and again creates that transparency between the advisors, the students, and the faculty. If our faculty advisors don't understand the requirements, how are we going to expect our students to understand the requirements?
Great point. Well, it's clear that two of you work very closely together. So much so that we wanted both of you to join us for this webinar today. We appreciate your describing for us why working together as partners in the academic side and the student support side is so important to career pathway work, and maybe give us an example or two of how you're able to create that partnership.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward for me. Our recommendation for that we're working on in this video says coordinated comprehensive student support. Well, you can't do that unless you have a partner. So Katie and I really worked very closely together, and it's because we're brutally honest with each other. So Katie knows that she can call me and say, hey, I've got the third student now that's had X problem, and this is just unacceptable, and we need to work on it. And I think our work pattern has been, we've been focused in on what the student issue is and tried to figure out what that is and generate maybe some alternatives, and then decide whose area of responsibility it is. And Katie can trust me that I'm going to go work on something if it's I need to convene meetings with faculty or work on a policy change. Sometimes Katie will say, well, this is something we can take care of in our area. And I think really not worrying about jurisdictional issues prior to figuring out what the possible remedies are, that's been the honesty and the focus on the student problem has been just a key for us.
Absolutely. We have an underlying value of what is best for the student is that's what we have to focus on. And so because we have that common goal, that helps us to always be in alignment. And so we can focus on what's best for the student and not about ego or blame. And I think that that's maybe just our personalities, is that we focus on the greater good and what's best for students. But I think that's really why almost all of us are in higher ed, right? We are here because we want to work with students and we want to help them earn their educational goals. And so if we can remember that and put that at the forefront, we're going to be a lot more successful.
And really, student affairs and instruction or academic affairs cannot work in silos. We have to collaborate. Just like Jennifer was sharing earlier about the importance of those supports for students, that support cannot be provided by only one of those areas, right? The navigators have to work with the faculty, who have to work with the deans, who have to work with the vice president of student services. We all have to work together to support our students, because a lot of those supports might be more structural things that aren't just an individual advisor to student. It needs to be that higher level. And so Mike and I collaborating together really supports our students.
I think there's a modeling behavior too that flows down from the two of us. So, if faculty are asking me or want to go up to the vice president, over to her vice president and down the other side of the mountain, we're not doing those sorts of things anymore. It's you have a navigator, they work in your team and with your related programs, and you can just ask some of those questions directly. And if that doesn't come up, there may be a referral to some specialist in the college, or maybe it'll go up the chain, or maybe we might have to convene a meeting. But if we can just talk directly to each other, I think that works the best for students, the most efficient, and we'll get the answers that the student is looking for quickly.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Can you all provide any other concrete examples of again, how you are able to create career pathways that really work well for students?
The first thing that came to mind is Katie and I worked on a whole new degree for the college that really solved a problem that hundreds of students were facing. We have selective admission allied health programs like a lot of community colleges do. So for example, nursing, physical therapy assistant, dental hygiene, we have all of those sorts of programs. We have hundreds of students that do the prereqs for those programs every year. And some of them, many of them are not admitted. There's not room, unfortunately, for many qualified students. They will leave the college sometimes, leave our system, leave higher education with a whole bunch of credits and no credential at all for that. And to me, that's just a sin. I mean, that is something we really needed to correct. So we had issues of students on the way in with their prereqs in terms of financing and so forth, and on the exit not having a credential. So we thought, what's something we can do to help that? We created a new Health Sciences Associates degree. We worked with several of these selective admission programs to try to come up with a 90 credit vehicle that included the prereqs for all of those programs. We even got a couple of those programs to change and make their prereqs the same, not two different psychology courses, so that we could be efficient with that. We embedded a short workforce certificate that students have a choice of, for example, like nurse technician or CNA, that they could put inside that. And that helps them qualify for financial aid. It also provides them an exit credential on the way out. And that's now grown to about the third or so largest program by headcount in the college. And we're just super proud that we were able to create something like that for students.
Yeah, absolutely. That program is one of the things I'm most proud of working on at the college, and it really would not have been created if Mike and I had not collaborated together, and if we hadn't seen the large issues that were happening for our students. Like Mike said, we have so many students that are interested, for example, in becoming nurses, and we only do admissions 3 times per year, 24 students per cohort, and there's hundreds of students applying every single quarter. And so a lot of those students, they're not going to get in. And when they don't get in, what happens to them? They've accrued all these credits. They may just leave the institution. So this really did fix, or give them an option. I won't say it fixed it, but it created an option for them to earn a credential so that they could then, have an associate's degree on their resume. They could apply to an applied baccalaureate program. They could reapply to our nursing program or other nursing programs with a prior degree and maybe have a better chance of getting into that program. They also, in that program, had the opportunity to do a workforce credential, such as to get their nursing assistant certification or other small certificates that did have a workforce outcome. So it actually allowed them to go to work if maybe they hadn't been working in the healthcare field. So that was something we were really proud of. And that really solves a large equity gap at the college, because a lot of these students that are first generation, students of color, are the ones that, maybe didn't have that background of knowledge that they needed to get the 4.0 in their first quarter to get the highest grades to be the one that's selected for the nursing program. And so, this gives them the opportunity not to just give up and leave without a credential when they don't get into nursing, but it gives them the opportunity to earn a credential and still have a pathway, potentially a pathway actually into that selective admission program. So that's something that's really important, and it proves a really important vessel for financial aid and funding opportunity, which, as we know, is a huge barrier for students. So anything that supports them in getting financial aid and keeping them in school is going to be, one of the most important things we can do to support them.
I think a second area that came up for me was the particular way we implemented navigators. Jennifer did a great explanation of how navigators work. Here at LW Tech, we happen to be one of the leaders in the nation in offering applied baccalaureate degrees in addition to the workforce degrees and basic skills that we do. So Katie and I have worked a lot to set up our navigator system where your charge is really to deal with students from, as we say, from basic skills to baccalaureate. So the student sees the same navigator all the way through. And it happens, it's just so gratifying to see a student come in and their career goals are only about this wide, and then they get much wider as they go along. They weren't necessarily thinking baccalaureate when they came in, but when they can see that career pathway that goes straight on through and work with that same person of significance in the college to support them, it just is really magical at that point when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. The navigators are aligned with the school or the meta major. So they work with the same student from their initial certificate all the way through their baccalaureate degree. And that's a really intentional process, and it helps strengthen the relationships and the communication between the instructors, the advisors, and the students, because we know how important relationships and trust are to success. And so if we can build those relationships from the beginning and then support that student for potentially 4 or more years, that is going to be really important for the student's success. And I think that that helps us receive better retention and completion rates.
And we've done a lot to integrate the navigators into the instructional team. So our navigators are invited to our department meetings and so forth. And they're, you know, as far as I'm concerned as the dean, the navigator is a big part of our team to actually deliver everything that we're trying to do. And although they report to Katie, you know, I still see them as a teammate. And it wouldn't work for them to come to these meetings unless Katie also agreed with that and made it a priority and set the expectation that the dean has invited you to this meeting, an advisory committee meeting or whatever it might be. And, you know, my expectation as your supervisor is that you go to this meeting. And then it's so great for me to sit there with faculty, and often they'll ask each other these questions. They have no clue what the answer is. And there's the person now sitting right at the other end of the table who can tell them exactly what's happening. Well, students are coming in and they don't understand this line in the catalog, and you know, we need to do something to work on that, and it's just invaluable to have that at the table.
Katie, were you going to share with us, or can you share how the college is using Starfish?
Yeah, absolutely. So Starfish is one of our biggest collaboration points across the institution. So all of us are using Starfish, the academic advisors, who we call navigators, the faculty and instructors, and then the students. And so we use that as our early alert system.
And we do progress surveys 2 times per quarter where faculty can select either flags, which would be concerns that they have about a student, or they can raise kudos that actually go to the student and say, you know, keep up the great work, things like that. And so that has been really useful in providing that timely intervention from the navigators. If a faculty member raises a flag on a student that's not attending regularly or is having low test scores, the navigators can actually reach out to that student, you know, right when they receive that, to connect and get them connected both to resources, but also just check in to say, how you doing? Let's check in, see what you need. And oftentimes we find out, you know, a student needs more support than just maybe tutoring. Maybe they actually need a counseling referral. And then additionally, we use Starfish for all of our advising notes. So all of the navigators write notes when they meet with a student, and then the faculty advisors that are also the instructors can see those notes. So we can keep informed about what's going on with the student and have a better understanding of how we can support the student, or what maybe patterns have been since the student started at the college.
Yeah, technology is such an important support to the colleges and all the personnel, faculty, and staff. And it's important, you know, that we share that, I think. The other area we talked about a bit at the beginning is the work that's being done on diversity, equity, and inclusion at the college, and at many of the, really all of the colleges in Washington State. I wondered if you might share a little bit about what's happening there.
It's hard for me to start the conversation with data, but numbers, because we're talking about people here. But we have been lucky at our college that we have implemented the Tableau software for data visualization and tracking. And we have lots of dashboards now that are able to show equity gaps by program and really be able to drill into different demographics. So whether it's race or gender, even age, we are concerned about young men and their persistence as well. And we're able to really drill into those numbers. And as a dean, well, the reason it pops in my head is it has been an effective tool. I'll come up with a new term here, but any DEI hesitant people that are out there, when I show them the numbers for their program, that's often a piece that they can choose to join in and take some action, join the conversation, pay attention to the other efforts that are going on in the college, because they care about each student in their program. And when they're presented with data that says it's not all the same, everyone's not making their way through their program exactly the same, and they are like, that can't be. I need to do something about that. And when it becomes personalized to them about the thing that they care the most about in their professional life, their program and their program students, it really has made a difference to be able to use a tool like Tableau.
Yeah, Flow has been really an important tool, and we have been using that for our equity, diversity, and inclusion goals at the college. We are using the data dashboards to identify gaps that are informing our work, and the college has become more data driven with our change. And so, for example, one of the things that we recently just did was we saw that there was a gap in our automotive program, and students were, dropping out of the program in the beginning of it because they didn't have access to tools
to actually work on the cars in the program. And so we were able to identify funding that may support those students to have a toolkit in the classroom. And so if we purchase more institutional toolkits and we have those in the classroom, toolboxes with tools that the students can check out, then students, especially some of our most underrepresented students that don't have resources or who are waiting on their financial aid to come through, have access to those tools, and they're not going to be behind their classmates, but rather they're able to access the classroom. So that's one way that we are reaching that goal of creating accessibility and focusing on some of our most vulnerable students.
And I think in the pandemic, it's become very clear. Often our problem solving will start with Katie calling me saying something is just inequitable for a group of students. And I'll be, oh yeah, what group is that? And she'll point it out to me, and then we'll talk about what the issue is and so forth. So we, and then start to solve problems. And as a dean, I can't necessarily make something instantly change. We have shared governance at our college, and the faculty have a lot of things that they do, but I do have the power to convene a meeting and bring together the people that need to talk about things and set the agenda that this is an important topic that we need to talk about. So for example, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were one of the first colleges, the first COVID positive case was here in Kirkland. And we were affected right away. There was no playbook for any of this. So when we quickly went to remote operations, but many students did not have internet access, did not have laptops. We have a lot of high-end programs that use high-end visualization tools. They're expensive. We had a whole group of instructional support technicians like TAs that worked physically on campus, but now there's no students on campus. So there were lots of issues to solve, and we immediately diverted resources to make those purchases, to purchase software, purchase hotspots even, to provide internet access to the students that needed them. We turned away no student. Every student that came forward that said they needed the software, laptop, or internet access got it. We turned our on-campus instructional support technicians into online technology coaches. So they had a job of, now you got this laptop that we just gave you and this other thing that we're connected to the internet. What do you do now? Don't want the faculty to work on that. That'll distract from what they need to do. But these ISTs were able to quickly pivot and help students one-on-one with getting that technology working to make sure they could do their assignments.
So let me just ask you then, each of you, for one recommendation that you have to others who work in the community colleges and are thinking about career pathways, improving their career pathways. And I'm going to start with Jennifer. What recommendation do you have, Jennifer?
I would say that my recommendation would be flexible, but be intentional. I think it's very important that we customize whatever supports for our students, because they're going to be different, and as we have had this conversation about equity, I think each group, each person is going to have a different need. And I think our system has to be flexible towards that need, and flexible in seeking out those services. As I was listening to the conversation, be flexible in seeking out those services, because tools may be an issue for one student, but housing may be an issue for another. So we have to make certain that we're looking at the full scope to be able to provide that holistic approach to student support.
Yeah, Jennifer, you're using a word there. I think I saw Sarah smile. Intentional. She heard that many, many times from our panel about how important being intentional, more intentional is. So Katie, what's your recommendation?
I think really strong relationships across divisions between student affairs and instruction are really important. These relationships are lucrative in supporting our students along their career pathways. And when there is transparency about expectations and regular communication between all of us, we can better support our students.
That's great advice. And how about you, Mike?
I think my advice, especially to instructional administrators, don't forget about the adjunct faculty. We need to have, when you talk about being intentional, teach them your ways at your college. How do you support students? What your expectations are? How you expect them to, when they ask a question, how are you doing? And the student answers more than fine. You know, what is that adjunct faculty member supposed to do at that point? A menu of referrals, a list is just not necessarily going to do it. They need to have some kind of connection to what those names of all those things are that are on there, not just call your dean or call your admin assistant, but have some sort of a method of really being able to connect fully with those students and make great referrals, follow up, make sure it's working. And we do that at our college through something called 4 Connections. It's something that that is a method that we do, but I suggest all colleges come up with a method that they can then teach to their adjunct faculty.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Thank you for reminding us of how diverse our faculty are and how intentional we need to be to support them as well, and along with everyone else. So Sarah, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Deborah, Jennifer, Mike, and Katie, it was really great to speak with each of you today. I really appreciate you sharing the many great insights about how this recommendation can be applied on community college campuses. I think you really brought it to life. We have my team, I especially appreciate you taking the time today to share your knowledge and your experience around providing a coordinated, comprehensive student support. The Designing and Delivering Career Pathways at Community Colleges practice guide can be accessed through the What Works Clearinghouse website. And we're going to continue the conversation in the next Practitioner's Perspective video series on Recommendation 5, which will be moderated by expert panelist Darlene Miller. To our audience, if you have any additional questions for our guests, please feel free to connect with Deborah via email. Her email address is displayed on this slide. Thank you all and take care.